Hello and welcome to another movie review from MBE tonight, today, tomorrow, whenever it may be you can see this.
Good afternoon, good evening and good night.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the Truman Show.
We are doing another retro review, John, and we were talking just before we came on. This could be our last retro review for a little while.
Yeah.
If we can get back into the cinema for next week. Films are starting to be released in.
Yes.
We want to get our fingers back on the pulse, but we are going back to 1973 tonight for Enter the Dragon, John.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by Robert Clouse, composer Lalo Schifrin, who we all know from such great films like Bullet, Cool Hand Luke, the Dirty Harry movies,
Yes.
Mission Impossible, and of course this great film starring the late, great, legendary Bruce Lee, the late, great, legendary John Saxon, and the late, great, legendary Jim Kelly, all sadly passed away now, John.
Yes.
I first saw this film at my grand's, surprisingly. Another film she introduced me to. Mid-80s. I would have been round about 8 or 9 at the time. Absolutely loved it at the time. First martial arts film I saw.
Yeah.
Got me right into it. This was just prior to Jean-Claude Van Damme films coming out, etc. So had a big impression on me. Bruce Lee had a big impression on me as well. Probably throughout my life. Since that film, I went back and saw his other films prior to this: The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, and of course Game of Death, which we'll not talk about. Robert Clouse is connected to that film, I might add. But I'm going to pass it over to you now, John.
Yes.
You can give your thoughts if you want before we get into the review experience. But I am looking forward to talking about this film.
Yeah, Stephen, so am I. I would just be repeating what you says, really. My admiration of the late, great Bruce Lee, a truly phenomenal guy. Mentally, emotionally, physically, he was light years ahead of his time. 40 odd years ago, he had a physique which, for me, has not been topped or even matched since. And we've had the likes of Schwarzenegger, we've got Conor McGregor, who's a sort of advocate of his way. Very similar physique, but not quite as good. The guy was miles ahead, and as someone who's currently doing weight training,
He was a freak of nature.
he's who I aspire to be. He's a similar sort of height to us, and I want to be like that guy. So he's a complete inspiration to me. And as you say, going back and looking at all of his movies, just amazingly short movies. His concepts, that TV show which has just recently been created, the correct way in which he envisaged it. What was that show? I think
Kung
it was
Fu, yeah.
Kung Fu. But they've changed it now, isn't it? It's San Francisco, set in the sort of 18th century. Chinese people are coming into the city. There's a lot of issues in there. There's gang warfare and whatnot. And that's what he originally concocted up. So he was miles ahead of his time. And as we'll get into later on in this review, because it's sort of linked symbiotically, they never really trusted this guy. They never gave him the respect he deserved. It was really up until this movie, and then sadly he's passing before the premiere of this movie, until he actually got the respect that he deserved. Prior to that, they were overdubbing him. They were, as he says, I think the Roper character, what's he called again, the actor? I've totally blanked. John Saxon.
John Saxon, yeah.
He get top billing on this movie.
Equal billing, yeah.
Equal billing. I mean, come on, what is going on? But Stephen, look, man, we'll get right into this review. I love this film. I've seen it about 3-4 times, maybe more now. It's just magnificent in all levels for me. But I'm going to try and break down, along with your good self, who you introduced me to Bruce Lee. Let's be honest, you did. You've got the nunchucks, you've got the lot. Shouldn't be saying that. Technically illegal in this country.
They're ornamental.
They're ornamental. So
the only blood that's been on them is my own, because I can't use them.
You're not as bad as that guy in this film, though, which we'll get into as well. Even you're better than that, Stephen, and you're no kung fu artist or martial artist, I should say. Kung fu is for Flemingtons. Stephen, though, starting right off from the beginning of this movie, it's a great introduction. This is how these type of movies should be done. They beautifully set up Bruce Lee as the lead, and he is the lead, even though he didn't get top billing. He's the leading man in this movie. They just beautifully set up the emotional, the sort of intellectual side of the guy and the fighting side. He is administering a lesson to a student physically, and then he gives a sort of great mental lesson to a student as well. Yeah. Speaking in sort of, I don't know, wise words about the moon and whatnot. The way he's articulating himself to teach this guy. His philosophy is second to none. And then the way it just slowly unearths the plot of the movie. Han's tournament, restoring honour. I think it's a Shaolin temple. Their ways. It's beautiful, the first 5-10 minutes of this movie. It's so organic. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what your thoughts were on it.
I liked it, John.
First shot you see Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the
a
way to
very
do it.
brief sort of fighting sequence, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's really just, what do you call it, sparring?
Yeah.
Really, it's just practicing. It's nothing lethal in it or anything like that.
He makes a guy tap out like a bitch, though.
You've got the Shaolin Temple monk, the sort of head monk. I don't know what his title was, but they have that little sort of conversation as well. Then he's introduced to Mr. Braithwaite, who sort of he fills him in on what's been happening at Han's tournament in his island and stuff like that. And really, it's just setting up it's a bit of exposition, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we know where it's going to head. But it's a good way of doing it within the first 5 minutes. You're not going to get bogged down with too much sort of backstory. You do get flashbacks, which we'll get into in a little moment, but it's just great. You know, it shows you the sort of calmness of Mr. Lee, as he's called in this film. He's not this raging sort of figure or anything like that. He's just
a very wise man.
Yeah, very wise and very just at peace with himself. And it's important to establish that for the Lee character very early on, especially the first time you've seen Bruce Lee in a film. You know, and this would have been a lot of people's first impression of Bruce Lee as well. So it was a good introduction to the character.
Yeah.
And some people, I've said it myself as well about the acting. Bruce Lee is not one of the greatest actors in the world. He isn't. But when he's got those sort of peaceful scenes, he holds his own.
Yeah.
He really does, but he will always be remembered as an action hero. Sadly, he always wanted to be more respected as an actor rather than a movie star. I think that was one of his quotes.
Yeah.
But sadly, people will always relate him to action, and in this film as well. But it was a good setup as well. And I like when they do that with films where they introduce the character very early on, even before the credits roll and the music kicks in.
Yeah.
I love the way they did that.
Yeah, and Stephen, that's you're right. Because also we do get the character role after that with Jim Kelly. Funnily enough, kind of, as I've said, stoating. That's a good Scottish word.
Yeah.
Walking around. I believe it's Hong Kong or something like that. It certainly looks like it. And obviously he's trying to mingle in and not look too conspicuous. And it's not working at all. He's wearing the biggest sort of, I don't know, what flares is the word, and heels. A ridiculously bright burgundy red suit. He looks good in it though, I have to say.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very imposing figure. Tall as hell. Lean as hell. Cool character. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the amazing 70 score, I says. The Walsh score in this. And look, it's just synonymous. You can tell the composer was linked to Dirty Harry right away when I was I didn't know he'd done the Dirty Harry movies. It wasn't until you revealed that to me before we came on. But when I was watching it, I just right away I thought, that's like Dirty Harry, man. The sort of little off beats of the drum, the wah, the guitar, 70s heavy. But this score is so much more than that.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that later on. It's just a combination of so many different things.
I also love the font, John, they used for the titles, the credits for Bruce Lee, John Saxon, Enter the Dragon. I think it was that kind of red, sort of opaque lettering they used, and it was just looked stunning.
Stephen, there's something about movies from this era. They just hold their own with modern day movies. They didn't have the budget sort of levels that we've got these days. They didn't have the big fancy CGI and stuff like that. The budget was teeny, under $1 million.
Yeah.
Gross, what did you say, $90 million?
$90 million, yeah.
A huge success. That's better than even Blumhouse, what they accomplish these days. $8 million for Invisible Man. It grosses ridiculous money. Way, way better sort of.
You take inflation into account as well.
Inflation,
so it's very impressive, yeah.
Well, it probably does work out similar to what Blumhouse are doing now. With inflation, it was probably the equivalent to maybe $6-7 million. Very, very, and obviously the success of the movie box office wise is even more impressive because inflation factored in, that is probably a lot more than $90 million, I have to say. So huge success. Just a shame, as I did say, without continually reiterating on it, that the man himself wasn't here to see the success and the legacy that was going to carry on. I think he realised he had a legacy no matter what. The guy was a towering figure in the martial arts circles and whatnot.
He couldn't walk the streets, John.
They could, I'm not surprised because people will probably want to fight him, Stephen, to prove themselves because they thought he was a fraud, and he certainly was not a fraud. The guy could hold his own anywhere. As we spoke about before we came on, fighting 5 guys at one time, upset with himself because he only took 3 minutes to kick shit out of them.
But he hadn't faced Cliff Booth at this chance.
No, he hadn't. To be fair, Cliff, in his defence, was a sort of... He was a veteran, he was a Green Beret, So the guy was...
And Fantasyland.
Yeah, he could hold his own. And look, Quentin sort of he stipulated why that happened.
Yeah.
It was his universe. This character was fictional. He could be as strong or as powerful as he made him be. Essentially, it was his character. So that's fair enough. But also, Stephen, that we do see further exposition in this scene, continuing on from Jim Kelly. It sort of blends in. And we have, I don't know the character's name, sort of setting out what is going to happen, why he's going to Hans Island, why he's going to be infiltrating. He's a drug dealer. He's dealing, or he's setting up opioids, I think.
Opium,
Opium.
Yeah.
It's obviously got a factory underneath the island. He's human trafficking. He's testing these drugs.
Front,
it's all a front. General shenanigans, I've says. And that is why Bruce has to go over to this island on Mr. Lee and infiltrate it. Sort of fronting it as a martial arts tournament, if you like. And Stephen, we even get the connection to Dirty Harry isn't just superficial in terms of the same composer. We get a little homage to Dirty Harry from A Great Line. Why don't you just pull out? Why doesn't someone just pop a 45 and kill them or something along those lines? I've got the actual quote, bang and settle it. So there's little nods to other pop cultural behemoths in that time era.
Bruce Lee's wearing is very Clint Eastwood for its day, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But he wears it better. Man, Clint is a great guy, big towering chap, brilliant actor. But Bruce was in far better shape than Clint, I have to say. But Stephen, obviously, this movie, the way it handles, I mean, I'm going to sort of combine this with the Big Rab, I've says, Big Rab Wall, Bob Wall, O'Hara in this movie, because it sort of interconnects into this general theme of the introduction of all the major players, be the antagonist, the trio of protagonists. It's just beautifully handled, the first half hour of this movie, the way it introduces these various figures that are going to be sort of primary figures moving forward in this movie. The likes of O'Hara and that great sequence, first and foremost, where it's, I think it's Angela Mayo, it says she's a guest in this movie. Yeah. It's Shia Lynn, I may be wrong there completely. The name is there, I'll try and find it. Sue Lynn. Sue Lynn, yeah. Her running away from the O'Hara character, it sets up, this is a guy who is a very nefarious chap. He gets a slash in his eye. He's sort of the right-hand man of Han. Yeah. And he's getting into these communities and causing issues. And just the way she beats the shit out of all of his men and she's running away, the old bitch shuts the window. I've said that as well, can't forget about her. Yeah. I was raging with her when I watched it.
It's like a guy in Kick-Ass, isn't it?
Yeah.
Goes away from his window.
Turns a blind eye. You old shit. To be fair, he was a young guy. She was slightly older. She gets a pass, but not much of a pass. A shite bag. But Stephen, I love that scene. We'll get into that first. What did you make about that, her stabbing herself? I've says it gave me flashbacks of the scene from You Should Have Left when Kevin Bacon, having a nightmare, stabs himself. It was horrendous. Yeah. You can really actually feel that. You could feel it. You could absolutely. It was the way the camera angle shot as well, because I think you actually just saw the hands, the arms like, reaching out, and it focused heavily in on the glass. And then you just see it, obviously moving it towards her torso. But it's a good sequence, John. It also first burst of action.
It gives Mr. Lee a reason to avenge as well. Although he's not an avenger, he isn't. That's not his philosophy. But there is obviously a score to be settled. Clearly, I think it's his sister, isn't it?
Maybe very well be,
I think it's his sister.
Because there's definitely blood.
So it kind of sets that up. It kind of sets up that later on scene where they're actually facing off each other in the tournament. Yeah. It gives it that added tension. You know, there's something personal.
It has a flashback.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same bit, isn't it? The glass. But it just adds to the tension and kind of gives it more edge as well between these two towering figures. Yeah.
Yes, and he is towering, but he's absolutely useless when you actually get to the fighting sequence. And he has to fight a real man. He's not fighting a little woman. Not that she was little in terms of her fighting ability, because she clearly had a lot of Bruce Lee's fighting skills in her, because she kicked a living shit. She was nippy, yeah, she certainly was nippy. That's what we see over here. Stephen, the way it introduced the main sort of, not just Bruce Lee, we get Bruce Lee in the first scene, but Roper and Williams, they get their snappy little introductions, I've says. It shows off their different fighting styles, their techniques. And it just reveals enough about their backgrounds, their personalities. It's not overly long, dragged out, painful processes of introducing these guys. It's short little 2 to 3 minute segues in the movie.
It's to give their reasons for
coming. Yeah. He's obviously got a debt issue. Yep. Roper, he's getting chased with these hoodlums. He's a mobster, I presume. Yeah. He's on the golf course. He hits a shot into the trees. These guys surround him, kicks a shit out of them. And then he says to his assistant, I believe it is, or something like that, I think you better book that flight to Hong Kong after all.
Yeah.
It introduces them really well. It fleshes out the characters in such a nuanced and organic way.
Jim
You get
Kelly's
a real
Williams
sense.
is on the run.
Yeah, he's on the run, yeah. And that scene's well dodgy. Also, it shows you that even as far back as 40 odd years ago, we know that it was even worse back then, Stephen, but we've not really moved on.
No.
Black people are still being harassed by coppers in the United States and everywhere, in a sense, all over the world, even here we have it. So that was a great little note to a societal issue back then, which is still haunting that community even to this day. But it does, I don't want to get down that route again and bog it down. It's an uplifting review of a movie from 40 years ago, which we both love, so not get down in political stuff and things like that. But the way that it introduces Williams, the way it introduces Roper, it's really neat. It effectively reveals them, as I says, and it never really drops the tone or the pacing of the movie. This movie's so slick, Stephen. I think we'll get into this just now. I was going to get into it later on, structure and story and pacing. We can do the story and the structure, but the pacing, it is so linear. It's the shortest feeling 2-hour movie I've ever watched.
Yeah.
It just flies by in the blink of an eye. I think it's an hour and 50 odd minutes.
Yeah.
But it's so quick. And it's because of the way the movie's structured, the introductions, the organic way that fleshes out the story. There's little sort of swirling dream sequences where it goes back and shows you things. Yeah. It's just beautifully handled, the character development, the story development.
Yeah.
The way that they introduce the villainous Han in the midst of his generosity, his hospitality, and the party he flings when they first go to the island. Really, really enjoyed the way this movie flowed. I don't know what you've got to say about the introductions, what you've got to say about the way it flowed, the structure of the movie.
I think Robert Clouse and I think it's Michael Aylen who wrote this film had it in their minds that they wanted to make sure that there was drama involved as well as action. You got to imagine yourself back in the day going to see this film for the first time, being very excited to see the film, want to see plenty of action. So they could have went down the road and made it a very easy and just went balls to the wall action from the kickoff. Yeah. But they don't do that. I think the first half hour of this film's handled very well. It's very important to establish the characters, which we talked about. They did that primarily with obviously Mr. Lee, because he is the main guy of the film. John Saxon's character and Jim Kelly's character, it was interesting to see the reasons that we didn't really have to know anything else other than that. No. There was a little conversation between the two of them as well. I think both of them were in Nam together or something like that. I'm pretty sure there's a line in there. I know you only watched this last night, John. I've watched it maybe
there was a reference
6 months ago or something like that. I remember there was still the same old Williams, which shows
they definitely had a camaraderie which wasn't there with Lee, because you mentioned a great little tidbit, factual, a fact. That obviously Bruce Lee doesn't have any interactions with Williams
did not know that, John.
At any point, or Jim Kelly in this movie at any point, which is mind-blowing because they are the three main guys in the movie. But it's true, I recall watching it last night, and it was just Roper and Williams who interacted.
Saxon was the sort of middleman. He
connected the
with both,
three,
It was mental. I never noticed that till I read that.
The closest you get is at night when he's sort of sneaking around.
Fly, that's as close as you'll get.
That's the closest. He spots him and he kind of acknowledges that he's out, but they never have any interactions. But you're right, Stephen, really well introduced. It introduces the reasons for going to this island, but it does show you the fighting style as well. He's a sort of orthodox, the Williams character, very punching, almost languid's what I want to say. He doesn't look like he should be a fighter, but he's very accomplished at fighting. Roper is slick. He's not quite Lee's level,
John,
but he can handle himself.
Would you say Williams, or Jim Kelly's portrayal of Williams is heavily influenced by Muhammad Ali?
Oh yeah, Steve, the speech.
The
not just that, man. The
like
speech as well. The way he talks, man. You look like you're straight out of a comic book.
Yeah.
It sounds like the way Muhammad Ali used to speak. Yeah. When he was dealing with press and stuff like that. That the mannerisms and just the tics he had when he was speaking, it reeked of Muhammad Ali. It was heavily inspired to me. Now I don't know how Jim Kelly spoke in real life, whether that was just his natural way of speaking. It may very well be, but it did seem to me that even the speech and stuff like that, it was very inspired by Muhammad. And because of obviously him being the figure he was at that time, and just massive. Even now he's still massive. The man's been dead a good few years now, but he's just iconic. It's Cassius Clay. He wouldn't want me to say that though, would he? It's Muhammad Ali. He changed his name.
It was Mama Calm Clay.
Yeah. He didn't like that name.
No.
Yeah, but he was a great man as well, but we'll not go down that route. We could go off and speak an hour about Muhammad Ali. What a guy he was. Way ahead of his time as well, much like Bruce Lee, just his thoughts and the way he articulated himself. Great guy. But Stephen, obviously they do find the way together onto this island, but the sequence leading to them going to the boat and stuff like that, the score in this as well, Stephen, I've touched upon it in my guideline.
John, I've got the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is absolutely incredible, Stephen. The score is a perfect concoction, I've said, of Eastern Asian elements, regular cinematic string parts, and then the sort of drum-heavy 70s wah vibe. It's a great concoction of different styles, and it works beautifully. You get that Asian vibe because they're going to Hong Kong to meet Han and be in his island. And then you've got this, it's almost like they're bringing together these three different guys into a melting pot. You've got a black guy, an Asian guy, and a white guy, and it's all the different styles all combining. It is absolutely fantastic, the score in this movie. I loved it. And it doesn't surprise me that the guy had worked on the likes of Cool Hand Luke Bullet, Dirty Harry, and also Mission Impossible, as you says. Yeah. He makes this movie as much as the action, because without it would lose something. I don't know why that is, but it's just scores in general. They make movies.
It's great as well. I remember reading, John, a bit of trivia about Lalo Schifrin's participation in this film, how delighted Bruce Lee was that they managed to get this composer involved in this film. Apparently it made his day. Being a big fan of the composer, he used to train to Mission Impossible theme. So things like that, you know, it's just little nuggets like that interest me. And obviously on the boat as well, you get to see the sort of restraint from Mr. Lee as well when Archer, I think his name is Peter Archer, I can't remember what his name is. I'd have to look that
What's
up.
your style?
Parsons. Peter Archer plays Parsons. And John, you're absolutely right.
Call it the art of fighting without fighting. The art of fighting without fighting. Show me some of it. He did.
There is a moment, John, there is a moment where Parsons, I think he kind of knees one of the Chinese boys when he's still on the ground at the point, and you can actually see the restraint in Mr. Lee. He actually has to look away because he's so angered by his behaviour, you know, and he's a disgrace. I thought that scene was very symbolic as well. It was a little comedy. It was a bit of comedy gold as well. Obviously they didn't plan for as much of the ocean getting into that boat as they did.
No chance.
That looked like it was sinking. They had to cut that very quickly, I would imagine, and pull him in by the rope. They said they weren't going to pull him in, but the actor, I think, would have been panicking at that point. But it's a great little scene, and it shows the mentality of Mr. Lee as well, that he can restrain himself. He has got discipline. The bigger picture, it's very tit for tat. I'll deal with him. I will deal with him, and he does deal with him actually very quickly. But only because Parsons obviously goes up to him and starts, "Do I bother you?" or something like that, and he says, "Go and rage yourself" or something. I can't remember what the line is.
Stephen, you're absolutely bang on, and I feel like that is a primary theme throughout this movie. You have three main guys, but the other two have got their vices, and they've got things that are taking their attention away when they get to Hans Island. Obviously Kelly Williams is women, and Roper, he's just infatuated with getting money no matter what, so he's almost drawn to Han. He's
Roper likes life's luxuries.
He likes life's luxuries, and he can sense that Han. He wants him to join the operation and become the American sort of figure for this opium distribution. And Lee is nothing like those two. He is single-minded. He's there to do a job. He's not interested in the woman. He picks the one woman who he can use to get information to help his task. You're right, absolutely steadfast, disciplined throughout the whole movie. And that's what I love about this movie. You're right, it's almost drama mixing with action. It's a smart action movie, which is a rare thing back in these days, because it was almost out and out action for the sake of it, with Dirty Harry and whatnot. And that's got a place as well.
Jim Kelly's next role after this was Black Belt Jones, so you can imagine what that film was like. 1974.
But it's so nuanced, Stephen. You're right, the little moment. And you speak about, obviously he's not the greatest actor, but just to have that subtlety in the movement, just looking away, it reveals so much about the man. And it's a great little scene, that, for a whole variety of reasons, showing that character what he's about, but also the comedic side. There is little moments of comedy in this movie. Some of them, I don't think, are deliberate choices to be comedic moments, as we'll get into in the fighting sequence, when a kick happens and there's bodies flying. And they've got no need to be flying because they are nowhere near. So there's unintentional.
And they actually use that in slow-mo as well. That's the kind of thing you get away with if you sped it up, not in slow-mo.
Fairness to them, Stephen, momentum, try to get away from it. If someone was flying towards you, you would kind of fall back just to get away from it.
I think if Bruce Lee was in front of you, you would.
Yeah, I'd be doing what that little guy did with the I always forget this. Big Bolo, I've called him.
Bolo.
Bolo, when that little guard guy runs away, I'd be doing that with Bruce Lee. I wouldn't be getting in a fighting situation with Bruce Lee. You want to die? Not a chance, man. This guy would kill you with one punch. But Stephen, obviously, we have after that then been introduced to Han. The hospitality of the man, false though it is, very impressive. I liked the food. I would rattle most of the food.
I didn't like the entertainment. I think they had sumo wrestlers and stuff like that, and jugglers and all that. And the music was a bit irritating at that point.
The food did look good. I liked in particular the braised pig.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go so much for the head, but I'd rattle that. That reeks of sort of Bavarian German food. Williams wasn't having it. He was a picky chap, didn't like the food. And Roper wasn't sure about the drink. And again, you get great little dialogue between Lee and Roper in that sequence. He's saying, why are you so apprehensive? I'm not. I'm just not sure whether I should drink the water or not. Don't play me. Don't try to con me, Mr. Roper, or something like that. Just great little dialogue in there. But again, the way that it introduces Han, he's this sort of mysterious figure. He's only spoken about up until this point. He comes out, they throw, I think it's apples or something. What is it?
It's like fruit.
Yeah, and they pin it. The women pin.
Yeah.
And then he just disappears off again, and it keeps that mysteriousness going. So I like that. He was almost like a Bond villain, this guy, in so many ways, with the prosthetic metal hand.
John, there's a lot of Bond in this film.
Absolutely. Secret lair on an island.
Yeah.
A guy with a cat.
Yeah. These underground sort of
and Bruce
prisons.
Lee is James Bond in a sense in this. He doesn't need all the gadgets.
The computers are all got the big tape reels as well.
It just
classic.
reeks of 60s Bond.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting for Sean Connery, Hunt for Red October, to come in. I don't need to even do that. I'm drinking, so I'll naturally my natural Connery will come out in due order. Believe me,
natural
it will.
Connery.
My natural Connery. No one speaks like Sean Connery in this country. This guy's been alive for 90 years now, Stephen, and no one knows where to get that accent from. This guy's from Glasgow or something.
Must be Edinburgh.
Is he? Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Well, that explains it then. Edinburgh people are weird.
Spent most of his time in Spain, John.
People in Edinburgh don't sound like that either. Not a chance. He made that accent up. But Stephen, obviously, we get the first fight in the tournament. Roper is wheeler dealing with I've says a little Tash Chinese guy. In truth, he is like Heinrich Himmler. Now, I'm a man who has studied history, and in particular, I'm absolutely infatuated with World War II, all the various facets, the good guys, the bad guys. Heinrich Himmler, undoubtedly a bad guy, a chicken farmer, and he made a fitting conclusion, poisoning himself with cyanide. He was a little shithead. But that look, they have just straight ripped off Heinrich Himmler. The high hairline, the sort of hairstyle, the moustache, the circular glasses, and they play this guy. He plays him like a fool. He's sort of swindling him. That's the Connery coming out, betting on the fight, knowing that Williams is going to win the fight, and he's taking his money off him. Yeah. And then obviously he fights afterwards, and he's doing deals with Williams to try and get money off this guy. And it's just that as an aside to the actual fighting, which is quite good as well. Yeah. It's just a great sequence. I really enjoyed the first fighting scenes. I think it's actually Williams. It is Williams that fights first, isn't it? And he just wipes the floor with the guy. It's very easy. And again, unorthodox way of fighting. Roper just kind of a kid's on. He's getting his arse kicked, and then he steps it up and knocks the guy the hell out after that. So, what was your thoughts in the early fighting sequence? We don't actually get to see Bruce fighting properly until a good, I want to say, hour and a bit into this movie.
It's the build-up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the build-up to the almost the finale.
It's really just to give these two characters this platform, to show what they can do, and it's very interesting as well. There are a couple of swindlers, because I think Roper's looking at Williams at some point saying, taking the bet now. I can't remember what it is, but he's like, nah.
There's one point where I think he's like, come on, I'm getting my ass kicked here. I've got a bruise on my face. Can we up the bet, please, so I can kick this guy's head in?
It's a bit of comedy, isn't it, to be honest with you? But it shows you the different styles between the two. I think Williams has got more of a swagger about him. Yeah, and I think Roper's style is very, I don't want to say rigid, but you can tell that he's went to, I don't know who trained him, if it was Bruce Lee or not. I don't think it would have been. It looks like he's took a crash course in martial arts, because John Saxon at that point was more famous for being an actor than obviously being a martial artist or anything like that. But he handles himself well enough. But I just felt that Jim Kelly's character had a bit more swagger about him, more fluid sort of movement about him.
I think the man himself just had more confidence in Roper. Plain and simple, it's just the personality. He had that screen presence. Yeah. He's just a cool guy, the afro, everything, just cool as hell. And when you have that and you've got that confidence naturally built in, it's going to exude when you're doing scenes and stuff like that, even fighting. And he could fight, to be fair. Stephen, also we get, as an aside to that as well, later on after the fight, we have Bruce going out. He does meet with that girl again, they have conversations.
Yeah.
He goes out, sneaks out, and we see him he's almost like I don't know what you'd even call him. He's artful. He's an artful dodger. The way he's sneaking behind things. He's like a ninja. That's probably. I was trying to liken him to an animal, but I can't think of any animals that sneak about like that. He was absolutely
like a cat. Yeah.
He is like a cat. Yeah, in a sense.
A human fly.
Absolutely. Human fly. Of course. Williams nails it.
Yeah.
The way he's just hiding behind and he's tricking the guards, and you see a little nod to what's going to come later on in the movie with the nunchuck guy. He thinks he's cool as he batters it off something. You can tell he's just an absolute useless shit.
He's a gonk. Yeah.
He's a gonk, yes, I was going to say that. Yes. And he moves on. And that has significance later on because he bumps into Bruce and he sort of takes the nunchucks off him and shows him how it's done.
Yeah.
But obviously, what did you make about that sequence and the way that he does Williams up like a kipper? Because Williams sneaks out.
He's accused of it, isn't he?
He sneaks out. You have a little sit down in the moonlight.
Yeah,
and the guard spots him.
Having a rest, John. Let's be honest. He's got a lot of women in his apartment.
Yeah, he's got about.
And he did say he was tired.
Yeah,
so
you have to excuse me if I miss one of these. I'm tired. He picked about 5. I think you missed 1.
I know.
What's that guy?
It's just so funny. I don't know. Again, it's unintentional humour, I think. Or maybe it wasn't.
No, I think it was deliberate.
Yeah. But I mean, he gets. I think one of the guards kind of nods over to Williams as if, "What are you doing now?" kind of thing. But he's not really saying anything other than, "I'm reporting you."
No,
and then obviously with Mr. Lee, what he's doing. Down in the sort of whatever it is, the sort of caves.
The underground.
The underground lair.
Facility.
He's going to get pinned for it, isn't he? That little guard's going to say, "Well, I saw him out." Williams defends himself, says it wasn't me.
He's not very conclusive though, is it?
I think at this point he doesn't really realise the seriousness of what's about to come either.
He thinks Hand's a joke, and he is, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yes, I says that to you. He looked like something out of an Austin Powers movie.
Yeah.
Just his movements, the ridiculous receding hair, the way it was floating down.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't take this guy serious.
Yeah. John, you have to go to a wide shot, by the way. You said you were going to do a wide shot.
Yeah, we have to do a wide shot, because we do have, I'll try and point to it. There you go. The mirroring's in effect here, incidentally. We have Enter the Dragon. So just to show that we appreciate this movie a tremendous amount, we have a wide shot of the actual poster. But Stephen, I love this sequence that comes up after this because it's the first moment we get to see Bruce fighting in the movie. Not just that, prior to that we see Bolo wiping the living shit out of the guards. Han wants to make an example of them and say, "Look, you've failed me, you've shown that you're useless at your jobs in a sense. Now you have to fight to prove that you're capable of being a guard."
You're worthy.
They go up against Bolo and Bolo absolutely wrecks the shit out of him, and that little guy it's left to the end, when he realises that I'm going to get my neck snapped here.
He looks 10.
Yeah,
he
looks like a strange sort of combination between a 10-year-old and Kurt Cobain. He has almost eyeshadow on. It's a little strange.
He's got bum fluff on his face.
Yes, he has.
He's very young.
He screams and runs away.
But
like
the chap that played Bolo, I can't remember his name. Bolo, I think
it's
Bolo
Young.
Yeah,
Bolo Young.
We were looking at photos of what he looks like today, and he looks a lot better than he did then.
He does,
strangely enough. He's not as bulky as he once was, but that's natural because he's obviously. He must be in his 60s now.
He must have been about 19 now.
He was young. You can see he was young though, John, but he was built really bulky. I think that was one of the sort of disappointing things that I would imagine a lot of people were looking forward to when they saw this film in the cinema for the very first time was Bolo and Bruce Lee going head to head, which never happens.
I think it would have ended in tears for Bolo.
Yeah, but it would have been good to see, but I don't think there was any reason for them. They didn't have really any interactions, I don't think, anyway.
No. There you go. Battery exhausted,
I'm
apparently.
exhausted, John, so I think we'll just continue on anyway, since we're live.
You're back, yes.
Since we're live, we'll just continue on. We've got this. Take it, we've still got the audio.
We have still got the
audio. So I am going to just gibber on anyway. You might as well just gibber on. We can't do much about it.
We can't, sadly.
So it's just a technical thing that we'll mention when we put the video up. At the halfway point. It'd be better if it was only 5 minutes to go, but who cares?
Yes, Stephen. Well, obviously, Bruce Lee does come in at this point and he fights in just the cool way in which they say, "Mr. Lee," and he pops his head out and looks to the side and walks out, and then he's obviously fighting O'Hara. And it's fantastic. That personal aside thing with the sister being killed, the flashback, and the way that he absolutely wrecks the living shit out of this guy, it is magnificent to watch. Yeah. It truly is. The kick when he's back flipping and kicking him, he's just quicker than him in every sort of facet in fighting. They put their hands together, he slaps him, and he starts to get angrier and angrier and angrier, and he can't handle the fact that this little guy is beating the shit out of him. And then obviously smashes the bottle, and that's the tipping point for Bruce. He decides, look, no, you're dying now, bitch. As he turns, he turns round and he also snaps his neck. And again, the cinematography in this scene is very, very cool. I'm going to go to a wide shot incident because there's no point.
You should, John.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
a little bit strange.
Better.
Yes, it's strange.
I'll just be the haunted figure in the background.
Or we could go for a little intermission and I can swap the cameras around.
I was going to suggest that, John.
Yes, that's what we will do because
2 minutes.
It's a bit of a shambles.
We'll be back in 2 minutes.
If you bear with us, guys, we're now trying to actually get this situation resolved. We're going to try and go to a wide shot of the two of us sitting together instead of it being split under one camera. It's a bit of a shambles, but we will have to check the shot just now. It'll be a bit of a shambles, but bear with me. But I do realise that I have movie news up as well. It's a complete shambles.
That's okay.
Right, there we go. We are far too close. We'll be back in just a the second attempt at sorting this out. This is a bit of a shambles. Let's see how we're looking. That's a little bit better, isn't it, Stephen? You have to admit.
Is, yeah.
I don't know how the manual focus is going to work, so I may have to pop this little manual focus on. This is very unprofessional, I do realise that, but hey ho. And all that jazz, there you go. Manually focused.
Oh, it's okay.
There we go. I think we'll crack on with that.
I think you did well there, John, considering.
Yes, and now I'll get into my beer now because I need it. Stephen, we were speaking, of course, before we were rudely interrupted by the Sony camera getting off. Rude shit that it is. About the first sort of scene with Bo fighting. He was playing a sort of nefarious figure up until this point. Kind of standing back in the shadows, looking on nefariously. We see him when they first land on the island, and then obviously when the guards let a hand down and there's an interloper getting out in the night and taking some of his men down and sneaking around his facility.
Yeah,
that sends him over the edge, and he gets good old Bo to come in and teach him a lesson. As I did say, what was your thoughts on it? I really enjoyed it, the way that little guy sort of squeals, and then obviously the way that it blends into Mr. Lee getting his hands on O'Hara for the first time. I loved that fight.
I think as well, John, it was important as well for the film to show how ruthless Han is as a boss.
Yes.
On the island. It's his island, it's his rules. And you know, he takes extreme measures with his own staff for the strictness around what the operation really is on that island. He's got a lot to hide. Obviously Mr. Lee is working in the background to expose him.
Yes.
But for everyone else, you know, it's all about the finer things in life, the tournament. You know, it's all a front, but it's a very good example, I think, he makes of those guards. You know, I think that's him sending a message out to the rest of his staff. Don't let this happen again.
Yes, and obviously, what did you make about Bruce's first sort of proper fight in the movie? O'Hara.
Yeah.
Fighting with him. The way that he absolutely destroys this guy. He destroys him mentally, physically. He breaks the man.
Yeah.
He has him screaming with sheer anger. And just the way that he takes him down, it's just nonchalant. He's so much quicker than him. He knows he's better than this guy, and it's vengeance for his sister as well. I love the scene, and then we get the unintentional humour of the guys being scattered like obviously bowling pins when he kicks them and he's miles away.
I think O'Hara's got it in his head that he's this imposing figure, going up to Lee, you know, with the board.
Yeah.
You know, and smashing it right in front of him.
Forgot
about
that.
And it's a good line, John.
Boards don't hit back.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's him saying you can do that with your pieces of wood, but
Jesus Christ,
you've not dealt with me yet, you know, and you're going to soon find out what I'll do if you try that, you know. And it's a good. I love the sequence. It's probably my favourite part of the film because it's all building up to that. We've already got the history between Mr. Lee's family and his, the history between his family and what O'Hara's done to his family as well. So it's important, and it's a good fight scene as well. You know, I don't think Bob Wall gets a touch him at all. I don't think he does. There's moments where he's lashing out, and I think Bruce Lee's just like sort of, you know, holding him back. But there's something flashing, John.
Yeah, that's a bad indicator.
I think we better move on quickly then.
El Gato, you just have to get your shit together here. Yeah. I mean, we're paying like £120 for a cam.
Let's go, the finale.
What are you doing? Yes. Come on, that shouldn't be shown on the screen, El Gato. Get your shit together, man. But Stephen, obviously it does. That sort of leads to the beginning of the end for this movie. All hell sort of breaks loose at this point. I think, is this the same bit when... Is this after or before? This may be after or before the actual the main brawl. This is prior to Williams. I think Williams has been captured at this point. He's strung up. Yeah. Roper sort of sees him underground. He's trying to get him to join him and whatnot. John, yeah. And then it all sort of kicks off after that. He sends him up. I think Bruce is hanging around, looking further and further into the operation, trying to get some information. He gets into the control room, sends off a signal, letting them know where the location is. He's using snakes. He's so slick the way he takes down Han's men. The nunchuck scene he relieves that guy of the nunchucks. That
cameo
was beautiful.
From Jackie Chan as well.
Jackie Chan gets hit.
Yeah.
Gets promised he'd be in every Bruce Lee film after that. Bruce dies.
Sadly. Yeah.
Sadly, and Jackie never gets to be in any other Bruce Lee movie, and he gets hit for nothing, in a sense. Stephen, I love the fighting in that. I love the use of sticks, multiple sticks, big sticks, nunchucks. his legs, limbs in general, just kicking the shit out of him.
John, I thought it was funny when the prisoners, when you see them behind the bars, they're all old decrepit guys. When they're released, they're all young guys fighting.
Yes.
Don't know if you noticed that.
Yes, they dive over on the main brawl, and they're sort of ways and strays who are get nothing to live for, and I think they're hanging around Hong Kong and whatnot.
No energy in them, but when they get out on those tennis courts, full of life.
Yes, they're fighting like hell.
Yeah.
Steve, we never ever spoke about that main shot when we went on to Hans Island, all of those guys fighting. That was very impressive.
Yeah.
Also, you revealed that
it's not an island.
It's not an island, it's just on a coastline, so the
tennis courts were real, John. I think it was a hotel or something like that. It's sort of tennis courts were used for the sort of tournament.
What was very impressive, Steve, the set design. We would have got into that at the end, but sadly we are running out of time rapidly.
We're running out of battery.
So we are not going to be getting on to set designs and things like that. We're going to go on to the movie's finale, Stephen.
Yeah.
And obviously he fights with Roper, then they take down the guards. It's all hell breaks loose. Bruce shows that he's just a one-man fight machine. He's beating the living shit out of everybody. He takes on Han.
Yep.
And the final part of the finale, there's mirrors.
It's iconic,
claws.
John. Yeah.
He gets clawed in the body. It's an utterly iconic shot of Bruce. And then it's also just that mantra from his master from the beginning of the movie. It's images, take the image away or something like that, and they have nothing. And he does that. He starts smashing the glass. I really liked the finale of this movie. It had everything. As I said, Roper setting about Bolo, mass brawls on the yard, great action. It leads up to a confrontation between Bruce and Han. There's real no match. He's no real match for Bruce. I mean, he's a level above.
I think it's one of the bigger letdowns of the film, John, that the sort of finale, the final fighting sequence was a man, an elderly man, who wasn't a martial artist. I thought that was probably
terrible
poor
hair
casting. Yeah, very fine.
And I can see that.
Almost like
terrible hair too.
Yeah, it was almost like Leslie Grantham's hair when he played Dirty Den. That
I
sort
have
of
better hair than Han.
Hair, but I think
and I'm wearing a hat.
It's still iconic, John. It's still. I think the dialogue between the both of them as well, and those mirror scenes as well. Very cleverly shot because when you're working with mirrors and they're sort of bouncing off each other, there's always that temptation, or there's always the there could be technical difficulties with exposing cameras and crew members and etc. But it's handled so well the way they shot that angles.
Comes down to set design, Steve. Really well designed sets in the main in this movie. Great cinematography. The guy didn't have an illustrious career by any means, but he did a fantastic job on this one. And Steve, that's been ripped off many times before, that mirror sequence. I've seen it in was it Skyscraper it was in at the end?
It was in Alaya, is that what you call her? Her sadly passed away.
Yeah, in the plane
one of
crash,
her videos, it was I can't remember what the song was called, but Jet Li appeared in it, and it was just paying homage to Enter the Dragon. But it's been done so many times since. And
that's because it was a great movie. A surprise success. $100 million, $90 million earned. People want to pay homage and use that idea because it's such a cool bit of trickery. At Chapter 2 as well, with Pennywise mirrors, and that was great. And then obviously Stephen, performances now. I mean, I've went with side performances and favourite non-Bruce Lee characters because you can't speak about this movie and say who was your favourite performer, because it's clearly Bruce Lee.
It's a Bruce Lee film.
It's a Bruce Lee movie. He is the main man. He is the best thing in this movie by a country mile. So I'm not even going to speak about that. We've waxed lyrically about Bruce. We both love him. He's utterly iconic. He's an icon, period, for everything that he'd done in the entertainment industry. Martial arts side of things, his physique, still inspiring people 40 years later. This guy is the epitome of this movie. We don't speak about him. It's so obvious. Side performances, I think Jim Kelly is just magnificent in this movie. I love his little one-liners. As we said earlier, almost like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Mohammed Ali, I can't say that name. Muhammad Ali. And his little tics and the way he speaks.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy. He's a cool guy. His fighting style's unorthodox, but it just works.
He has some of the best scenes as well,
does,
and some of the most memorable scenes. John Saxon's an accomplished actor, and he holds his own in this. It's very clear to see that in acting terms, John Saxon's a cut above the rest of them in that sense. But just for scenes and obviously appearance, I would go with I'd go with the Williams character. I liked his character. some of his lines are more memorable than obviously Roper's as well. So I would go with Jim Kelly.
Stephen, John Saxon was very, very funny in this movie as well. Some of the stuff with the wheeler dealing and stuff and just try to swindle money, I thought he was hilarious.
Yeah.
Some of the looks as well when he was getting taken through the facility. He's like, yeah, I'm on board for this. And he's seen some things happening. He was getting further and further down a rabbit hole.
I know the poster isn't in shot or anything like that just now. But it is, it's got one of the biggest sort of spoilers revealed. Jim Kelly's character's actually hanging in it.
Yeah.
So, kind of...
It's terrible, isn't it?
Terrible marketing, yeah.
Well, there's many posters, to be fair. This is one specific poster that I like to look off personally. But there's other ones with other logos, so perhaps it wasn't given away. And the movie's 40 years old now. Maybe they've redesigned it, and it's like people should know now. They should have watched this movie. If you've not watched this movie, there's something wrong with you guys. But obviously, Stephen, no other real side performances. So we'll move on to... I reckon we'll just round up our thoughts on the movie, and that's
I think so,
point. Technical stuff's done. We've spoke about the score, cinematography, set design. Final thoughts on this movie. Its overall legacy. I mean, what can you say about this movie? I think this has been so inspirational to many other action movies which came after
John,
it.
It's a double-edged sword for me because as many a good action films, martial art films came out of it. A lot of bad ones came out as well. More impersonating ones than good ones that sort of inspired by it. I would go as far as to say, you look at the likes of films like The Matrix. Would films like that have been made if it wasn't for the introduction of this sort of style of film?
I don't think so. Would Jean-Claude Van Damme have had a career? Absolutely no chance. Steven Seagal would not have had a career. Not a chance. So it was hugely inspirational in that sense. Its legacy is palpable. It created many careers for these guys. It gave them a livelihood. It created that sort of niche genre of martial arts meets action meets drama. It's such a good movie. For me, it's his best movie. I love it. I've watched it many times, as I says, probably half a dozen times. It's really, really cool. Every facet, it's neat. The way that it introduces the characters. Yeah. They're sort of 3D, they're not 2D. I like the dialogue in it. I like the way that it moves along at pace. It never really takes itself too serious. And amongst it, even though it has got drama elements, it's just structured beautifully as well. The antagonist is like a Bond villain. You put a Bond villain in a movie like this, it's just going to work. It really is, let's be honest. And then, obviously, I mean, we never touched upon, finally, Bruce Lee, what he could have been, man. I mean, this guy died when he was 32 years of age, Stephen.
Yeah, sadly.
Terrifying what he could have accomplished if he hadn't passed away untimely like he did. He could have became a sort of Schwarzenegger before he was Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. As well, John, it's sad as well because I would have loved to have seen his version of Game of Death, what he had plans for that. Robert Klaus would come back and I'm going to say finish the film, but it's such an incomplete film, even the release they did do. But it just the concept was just it was interesting, and obviously that iconic yellow suit as well, the sort of jumpsuit thing he was wearing. Yeah. Everyone knows and loves. He stepped away from Game of Death to do the Enter Dragon film because he knew this was going to be his big moment. It was going to be his introduction to the Western world and see what show the Western world what he can do as an actor and an action hero as well.
Yes, Stephen, and it's sad that the man never got to realise it, although he did in a way, posthumously. People respect him enormously. His legacy is just untouchable, really. It's bulletproof. Yeah. So, Stephen, I think that's going to round up with thoughts overall on this movie. I'm going to try and stretch over and switch the graphic off because it's incredibly crap looking if I continue talking whilst rounding it up on that note. What is your thoughts, though, guys, on Enter the Dragon? What do you make about Bruce Lee in the movie, which catapulted him to widespread fame, but obviously died before it actually get premiered? So, what's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on the man's legacy, this film's legacy, the film in general? Our review, if you've got anything to say at all.
Apart from that little red thing up here.
Yes.
Ignore that.
Yes, ignore that. And ignore the cut in the middle when the camera died and we had to sort of change the whole setup of a show. If you've got anything to say about that as well, you can comment below. I'm sure it's been a hilarious viewing experience for people coming in and watching this. Comment below and let us know anyway, guys, what your thoughts are. You can also like the video if you've enjoyed it, and you can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. Lord knows why you would. And if you do, you will see us back Monday through Thursday for movie news, and on a Friday for reviews. I'm sure there'll be some more recent releases going to be getting reviewed moving forward, although I hope not. I hope we still do some retros, and you will see us doing reactions as well from time to time. But look, guys, on that note, I'm going to have to stretch over. Bye-bye. Maybe not then. I'll need to go to the wide shot, Stephen. This is a shambles. You know what I'll do? I'll end it on that note. There you go. Shambles, guys. Bye-bye.